Even though Yuta got shanked by Akane, that's not going to stop him from unleashing the true power of Hyper Agent Gridman. The Gridman finale is nearly upon us, and this episode certainly is building up to a great final confrontation. This episode also reminded me that Gridknight should have been the main character of the series. His fighting style is so much more fun than Gridman's. Maybe it's because he's more acrobatic, maybe it's that he fights like a freaking luchador in a giant city. I don't know what it is, but I just love this character. This episode right here also just gave me some of the heaviest Neon Genesis Evangelion vibes. That's not too surprising, as if you trace back the history of Studio Trigger, they go all the way back to the days of Gainax, the guys who worked on the original Eva series. But this episode right here was sort of a great build-up to the big final confrontation, which looks like it is going to be a very sad type of battle, especially because Akane is going to be directly involved in it. Spoiler warning, at the very end of this episode, Alexis Carib is going to transform Akane into a giant kaiju version of herself, and she is going to battle against Gridman and Gridknight. But how is Gridman even here? How is Yuta standing? He just got stabbed by Akane in the last episode. Well, they follow up on it here. He gets stabbed, and Akane just decides to leave with no one even trying to stop her. I guess why try to fight back against a god? You're not really going to be able to do anything. They decide to bring him to the hospital, as there's no way of actually communicating with anyone anymore. Phones don't work, internet don't work. Basically, they are off the grid. And this is when all sorts of chaos ensues, with Alexis deciding to unleash all of these old kaiju on the city, basically the best of collection monsters from the series, which go on a rampage, destroying everything like Godzilla throwing a shit fit. This is when Gridknight makes his big entrance in the episode, actually meeting up with all of the heroes and getting their approval to actually go into battle, accepting his brand new title as Gridknight, something that he seems to do reluctantly at first, but he did learn that you have to pay back your debts, something that gives him a very big human quality, which makes me like Anti even more. There's also a really tense confrontation between him and Utsumi, who is really pissed over the fact that while he really loved seeing his best friend transform into a superhero and fight against monsters, it did end up killing a lot of innocent bystanders, and he sort of let himself be complacent in that. He's disappointed, and he's also really mad at Anti for being the one who actually caused a lot of that damage. But he's also a big fan of kaiju. He's completely conflicted, and without a doubt, he might be the best thing about this episode. It almost seems like they're waiting for this big moment for Utsumi. Like, he has to have his moment in the sun. Even by the end of the episode, when he realizes the true identity of who Gridman truly is, he finds himself being disappointed that he can't really do anything. He doesn't feel like he's a major player in this story, and I'm kind of hoping he'll get some sort of redemption moment in the next episode for all of that. But speaking of the real identity of Gridman, let's get to that right now. So we finally learn why Yuta actually lost his memories, and the big twist is he actually didn't lose his memories at all. The real Yuta Ibiki is actually asleep, and he's being inhabited, possessed by the Hyper Agent Gridman. This entire time, he's been Gridman. He's been the character. That's right, Yuta this entire time hasn't even been Yuta, it's simply just been Gridman himself, and why this still all is a complete and total mystery. However, when he actually awakens to his true identity, he starts to be able to utilize his power in a much more effective way, being able to team up with the Neon Genesis Junior High students as well as Gridknight in a big final epic battle against this group of kaiju, including everyone we've seen from the series, even that one giant mountain-sized one, which was really great to see again, as it was really great to see Gridknight and Gridman fight back against it so single-handedly. Watching these characters just jump around this city, destroying buildings, fighting against monsters, and utilizing ridiculous giant Power Ranger-style attacks never gets old, and this episode certainly turned up the heat. I especially loved that even Gridknight can utilize the abilities of the Neon Genesis Junior High students, Gridknight is able to use samurai caliber sword to a really great effect, and I especially love that even when Gridman comes into the battle for the first time, he's already fully transformed and ready to kick all sorts of ass. Basically, watching these guys fight against these monsters in this episode is just so damn satisfying, and I've been hoping for a big giant monster brawl like this from the entire show. I especially loved this one shot in the episode where you had all of the students and Rika's mother running to their store, and they were shown in the very small portion of the panel at the bottom of the screen, and then you get this big wide shot of watching Gridknight fight against these monsters, and it's kind of like in slow-mo because they're so big, but it's just so fun to watch all of this chaos going on in the background. Something that I think is kind of funny about the show is how even though there's kaiju and monster and superheroes fighting in the city, a lot of people seem to take it in stride. You'd think there'd be a lot more panic going on, but there's actually none of that at all, as if they're almost not aware of these things, or they're oblivious to the true danger of these giant monsters in front of them. It's hilarious and it's ridiculous, but like I said, this episode definitely gave me some huge Neon Genesis Evangelion vibes, especially in the scenes where Yuta actually revealed that he was Gridman for the first time, when the music started playing, the images of Gridknight fighting against the monsters, which really looks a lot like an Evangelion unit. When you squint your eyes just a bit, everything here just felt like Evangelion. But then we have Akane, who seems to be just completely conflicted at this moment. She's a god, but even all of that power can't truly bring her any happiness. She doesn't want to make kaiju anymore, and it seems pretty apparent by the end of this episode with her confrontation with Rika that she's basically in love with the girl. But before they can even reconcile their feelings or what their true friendship means, Alexa shows up, transforms Akane into a monster, and the episode ends. What's the rundown on this episode of Gridman? We're basically building up to the final episode of the series, and so far I think the ride has been pretty fun, although I'm really sort of hoping that the final episode is just going to sort of go all out with everything. I mean, what I've really loved about Gridman is while it seems kind of complicated on the surface, it's actually really damn simple, to be perfectly honest. And it is sort of a great homage to the original Gridman and to Super Sentai, Tokusatsu, and all of that. It manages to do that a lot with its style of animation. Like I said, I loved that shot of that wide shot of the monsters fighting against Gridknight. Probably my favorite shot of the entire episode, aside from the whole luchador slamming the monster into the other one shot. There's just a lot of great moments in this episode which managed to evoke that feeling of watching a live-action show, of watching actors and costumes fight against each other. It's also a time where I think CG animation actually does kind of work and benefits from the scene. Most of the stuff that happens in the real world and everything looks sort of like a traditional anime, but once we get to those battles, they have a very distinct look to them, but it also makes sense as they're basically fighting in this weird other world. Akane again proved that while she is the villain, in many ways she's kind of the main character of the series. She's easily had the most development, but it all kind of gets trumped when learning that Yuta has actually been Gridman the entire time. It does sort of change your perspective on the rest of the series, and it's going to make rewatching it fun, as you're always going to try and find those little clues that maybe he was Gridman the entire time, and he was basically talking to himself into the computer. But if I had one wish, it's just give me more Gridknight. This character's awesome. I love watching him fight. I love his character. He's had a tremendous amount of development, and it was fun watching a kaiju become a more human-like character. There's something to be said about great character transformations, not just physically, but mentally, and it's truly shown in every single light in that character. I freaking love it. Also, again, the show still manages to have a great sense of humor and not take itself entirely too seriously, although some of the long pauses that the series is known for honestly gets kind of old. It's like a Conway Twitty joke. I'm just not feeling it. And again, it comes across as Evangelion-like in I think the worst way possible. What I'm talking about is that one classic scene where Rei and Asuka are on the elevator and there is this tremendously long silent moment of no animation. It just comes across as pretentious. Good news is, this series never goes too far into that realm and reminds you that it's basically just a fun show about watching superheroes punch the fuck out of giant monsters. And I can't wait to see how it's all going to wrap up. I have a feeling that Akane is indeed going to be saved, although with only one episode left, I wonder if we're even going to get any proper resolution for, again, what the fuck is even going on with Alexis Carib, or even the existence of Gridman in the first place. We're probably not going to get an answer to that, but if you accept the show for what it is, I I think you can end up having a lot of fun with it, which is why I'm going to give this episode right here a solid 4 out of 5. You guys should definitely check it out. It is action-packed and one of the best episodes of the series. Let's see how the entire thing is going to come to an end. What do you want to see from the final episode of Gridman? Let's get a discussion going in the comments section below. Thank you guys for watching this review. I'll see you all next time, and as always, stay down, baby.